We can go ahead and get started here. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Stewart. I'm a member of the Shenandoah Group of the Sierra Club Executive Committee. I'll be your facilitator and tech support for this evening. On behalf of the Climate Action Alliance of the Valley, the Shenandoah Group of the Sierra Club, and the Harrisonburg 50 by 25 campaign, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening for a presentation and discussion with Harrison Wallace. A few housekeeping items as we get started. Keep your microphones muted throughout the presentation for the most part. That said, this will be a little bit more of a conversation style, so Harrison might be engaging you throughout the event as we go through. The chat is also open for your use if you don't feel comfortable speaking, and we'll be sure to address any questions that you post there during the Q&A. Harrison Wallace is a program officer with the Climate and Clean Energy Equity Fund. He was formerly the Virginia director for the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, where he led both lobbying and grassroots organizing campaigns focused on climate action in the Southern Coal State. Harrison is a lifelong Virginian, born in the Shenandoah Valley, and then spending the rest of his childhood in Richmond. He earned his Bachelor's of English degree from James Madison University, go Dukes. Harrison has previously served as the co-chair for the Virginia contingent of the 2017 People's Climate March and on the steering committee of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative. He currently serves on the board of the Virginia Civic Engagement Table, and he is a graduate and advisory board member of the Virginia Progressive Leadership Project. In his spare time, Harrison enjoys watching and playing basketball, reading on his porch, and hiking. Harrison, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening to share your thoughts, insights, and expertise around this important topic. The room is yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. And good to see a few familiar faces. A few new faces. I'm excited to talk to y'all. I know I had a lot of opportunities to talk to Cav and the Shenandoah Sierra Club over my 5.5 years working with CCAN, traversing across the state, trying to bring climate action to our formerly Southern Coal State and now a state with a pathway to 100% clean energy by 2050, and hopefully moving even faster. So again, just want to thank Cav, the Shenandoah Sierra Club, and Harrison 50 by 25 to make sure that we're, to just thank y'all for inviting me out here. And to give you an idea of what I want to talk about today, I want this to be a bit of a conversation. So if you have questions, throw them in the chat or feel free to let me know. And then I think this will probably take 25-30 minutes, and then all the rest of the time we have here, I love to answer your questions. But I want to talk a bit about how I got here to the spot I'm in now, and especially the CCAN, where I probably met a lot of you, or if any of you have heard of me, it's probably from that work. And then spend the majority of the time going into like what our electric bill is. This is a Dominion heavy presentation, though some of you may be in a co-op, some of you could be with Appalachian Power. So some of this applies to that, but Dominion being the biggest offender when it comes to overcharging and sneaking things into our electric bills, I think will give you the best opportunity to really see exactly what we're dealing with when we talk about electricity burden, why our energy bills are so high, and what we can do about it. So that's my plan for the day. So I want to start off, again, just telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a big fan of personal stories. I think they really help movements and make you connect with an organizer, a lobbyist, whoever it is. Like, it's hard to know exactly why someone's passionate about something if you don't know where they came from. So, you know, first I want to mention, as Jonathan said, I am a JMU graduate. I'm born in the Shenandoah Valley, a lot of roots. I'm from Waynesboro, Virginia. And, you know, if any of you are JMU alumni, you know, one thing is that we are a very sociable people, and we know how to get things done, no matter the situation, and also no matter how much you may have had fun the night before. So I think one thing that really brought that home was I was actually at a best friend of mine's wedding in Charlottesville just this weekend, and his wedding was canceled due to COVID 36 hours before it was supposed to start. And myself, the groomsmen, the bridesmaids went to work, all JMU grads, planning an entire wedding in 36 hours. And we were able to pull it off in Charlottesville and Wintergreen to make something special happen for some friends. So just a reminder for those of you who have kids or grandkids, send them to James Madison University. They will be able to accomplish anything. So there's my plug for JMU. I try to do that in any speaking engagement I get. But a little bit more about me. I grew up in Waynesboro, Virginia. I moved to Richmond when I was 8 years old, but my mom, my grandma, my great-grandma, as well as my dad who lived in Stanton, all lived in Augusta County in some way for many generations. So I really understand like what it means to be from the Valley, to kind of be away from the urban crescent where a lot of people pay attention to Virginia, and to understand nature. And also, I'm from a family where my mom worked for DuPont, and that's where she, made her pension and worked for a long time until the plant shut down. And when they tried to unionize, kind of forced them out in general. And so that was like my first experience learning about how a corporation can at one time help employ a town, give people a living wage, but at the same point, put their profits over the well-being of the folks who work for them. So that, along with the fact that my mom was always watching the news, is kind of what got me into wanting to tell stories and eventually get involved in politics. When we moved to Richmond, the thing that kind of really agitated me about climate change was I was watching the Hurricane Katrina coverage as a middle schooler heading into high school. And I saw a bunch of people who look like me, who are American citizens in the richest country in the world, stranded on their roofs, really with no one coming to help them, like just, news cameras bouncing around, taking pictures of them and putting them on TV, but no one was helping these folks. And they kept calling them refugees. And myself as a kid was like, well, no, they're Americans. Like I've seen the refugees on the news. These are Americans. They're supposed to be treated differently. And that's when I realized, like, in a climate disaster, if you're a vulnerable person, no matter where you are, unless somebody's standing up for you, you can be left out in the cold or in the water, as they were in New Orleans. And that's kind of what agitated me to want to learn more about why that happened. I didn't become a climate scientist overnight after that. It was a slow burn, but every time I would, look at the news, I started looking for those kinds of stories. And that is what I think got me really activated when President Obama announced his campaign when I was a senior in high school. That was my first election. So it was kind of the perfect storm. I'd already been agitated about this storm in New Orleans. And then I learned about this guy who was also the son of a single mom and wanted to change his community, and actually got pretty agitated about Hurricane Katrina. And so I kind of just, wanted to model my life as much as I could after a guy like that. So that's when I went to JMU, I wanted to go to learn how to tell stories and become a community organizer like him. Maybe not the law school part, but definitely getting into the community. And that's pretty much what pushed me through school. And then when I got out, I was like, I got to go help other people like him get elected. And I went and started working on a bunch of political campaigns, pushing for Democrats to get elected, Democrats who were talking a lot about climate change. And one of them was former Governor Terry McAuliffe, who I joined on stage with a professor from University of Virginia, Michael Mann, who was sued by Ken Cuccinelli when he was our attorney general for daring to study climate change with state money. Governor McAuliffe talked a big game about what he was going to do on climate. And once he got elected, and I went on to my next campaign, I saw on the news that he was standing with the CEO of Dominion announcing the Atlantic Coast Pipeline with a giant smile on his face. And, that along with other things from the Keystone Pipeline and other issues where even President Obama wasn't doing the right thing, made me realize that advocacy is the way I need to go if I want to make that kind of change that I knew I needed to instill when I was watching Hurricane Katrina, and then what I thought politicians did. But the more I realize, it's like metaphors and rhetoric are one thing, but once you get in office, you only do what you're pushed to do. And that's what led me to CCAN. I literally went online and just looked for the group who was making the most noise, who was the most unafraid of politicians. And Mike Tidwell and the folks at CCAN, and shout out to April, who's on their board, were doing that work. So I joined, I moved out to Hampton Roads, started fighting sea level rise, got a chance to start lobbying in Richmond with a background in community organizing instead of a background in policy. And that really opened my eyes to, again, what was missing. When I was looking at the candidates, no one was pushing them. And then once I got into the lobbying world, the only people who were funding the work were usually connected to business. So of course, the bills and the priorities that were coming out of it were going to be more business friendly. And because of that, because of everything that happened before me, I lobbied hard and pushed for community-based solutions, but I hit a wall because of the funding that was coming in. And that's what led me to the job I have now as a program officer with the Climate and Clean Energy Equity Fund. We work to produce equitable climate solutions all across the country in about 13 states right now. And our entire goal is to go into these states, usually like, what people will call battleground states or purple states. They're not super progressive, but they're getting there, and make sure that when we have that change over to a progressive leadership, that the bills that are coming out of it are also progressive. And that's my job now. I work in multiple states trying to push organizers, lobbyists, legislators to do the right thing on climate and think about our most vulnerable communities. And that's kind of how I want to get into what I want to talk about today, which is what's going to be probably the biggest conversation, the biggest fight at the state level in the climate, I guess the climate conversation for probably the next 10 years, which is going to be how are we going to pay for all this? For the most part, people are starting to realize at the state level that we're going to have to move towards 100% clean energy. In Virginia, we passed a law to do it. At least we've got the energy production side done. We still have transportation and buildings and other things we have to work on. But the next part is that we have to pay for all this. And right now we've already been paying a lot for dirty energy, tons of gas power plants, nuclear plants, and a lot of coal plants are starting to shut down now. And all that goes into our electric bills. And then we do need to be able to shut all that down and then convert it to solar and wind and battery powered energy without bankrupting everyone. And so that is going to require a lot of folks being able to understand what their electric bills are and push their legislators to not only push for clean energy solutions, but also energy efficiency, and then to give regulators the power to tell monopolies like Dominion that they can't charge you for everything that they want and throw it into your bill. So what I want to do is talk a bit about what bills are versus what your rate is. If you read a lot about Dominion or get any of their ads on social media or see them on TV, they usually talk about how they have the lowest rates in the nation. So we're going to dispel that myth if you don't already know the makeup of how your energy bill works from them. And again, if you're not a customer of Dominion, some of this still applies to you. I think the main goal is to see how a normal electricity bill is made up, and then you'll see that Virginia overall just has really high bills. So let me share this. Hopefully you all can see that. Now, all right, should be able to see it now. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that, so I know I'm good. Good, okay. Are you guys seeing my notes or the presentation? I just realized I should have practiced that before I got on here.
Right now we're seeing, yeah, speaker notes.
Okay. So
There we go.
Cool. I'm gonna move this over here. All right. So what I wanted to talk about is, what are you really paying for in a Dominion Energy bill or any typical vertically integrated monopoly, which is a utility company that owns the stuff that's being generated, the poles that are bringing it to your house, and the fuel in between. So they just own the whole infrastructure that's getting it to your house and producing the energy that you're using. So that's what we have here. So just a heads up, you're paying too much if you didn't know. You may not even need this. We wouldn't even need this conversation if we were doing well. So to give you an idea of how much, right now, the national electricity bill or energy bill average is about $115 a month. And in Virginia, we're at 135 is our average. So we're sixth highest in the nation. And in the South Atlantic, we're the second highest, only behind South Carolina, where they have literally they've had like failed nuclear plants. They've added billions of dollars to their electricity bills, and they're still nowhere near where we are. So we're not doing well. So this is from 2019, so pretty recent numbers that I pulled up from the Energy Information Agency. So and all these links are down below if you guys want to check any of this out. So overall, we're not doing well. We do use more energy than a lot of the other country. I didn't put that on here, but in general, we use about 200 kilowatts more on average per month than other areas around the country do. We're going to get into a little bit to why we use so much more and how that really doesn't help Dominion's argument when they keep talking about rates. If the gas is cheaper, but you're buying a Suburban, it's not really going to matter. You're still going to be paying more a month for the gas. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So this gets into what's in an electric bill. It's three parts. The base rate, which is what makes up the majority of it, and it's what Dominion's normally talking about when they are saying anything about their rates are really low. You don't have anything to worry about. They're talking about their base rate. These are the general operating costs. They usually encompass like the utility's total cost of providing service, other than the fuel costs, which are right below it there. And then importantly to remember, in 2017, Dominion passed a bill where they actually froze their base rates as a way to get out from under the Clean Power Plan from President Obama, I'm sorry, in 2015. And that allowed them to freeze 60% of their rates, but the other 40% they could do what they wanted with. And that gave the illusion that our electric bills would stay the same as a kind of compromise for what they said would be a really expensive transition to clean energy. But by doing that, they also allow regulators, they disallow regulators from being able to look at if they overcharged us. So that was the bad deal that we made back then. And we're still kind of paying the price for that. But that's just an idea of kind of how these rates are used to fool people into thinking that they're paying low electricity bills. The other one is the fuel adjustment clause. This is just the cost of fuel. This is probably the most fair cost and the one that clean energy will reduce the quickest. So fuel comes from coal, even nuclear, natural gas, biomass, all these things where you're going to have to burn something or bring something in order to produce the energy. And basically, whatever cost to bring that thing in, we pay. So right now we have pretty low fuel costs during the pandemic as gas, oil, and coal prices have plummeted. But as we switch to wind and solar, we'll have no fuel costs because, we have the free fuel of the sun and the wind powering it. And then once we have battery power, then the batteries will hold the excess and power us at night. So again, another reason for moving to clean energy is that the fuel adjustment clauses will slowly disappear as we switch into a cleaner future. And then the last one is a rate adjustment clause, or RAC. Maybe you've heard of it as a rider. This is the doozy. So this is like any additional charges that utilities add to electricity bills that are approved by the State Corporation Commission, the SCC, our governing body over our utilities, healthcare, and telecom agencies. So this is this is Dominion's one way, and Appalachian Power, any regulated utility, to just throw on costs onto your bill. This is where clean energy gets tricky. It's where, power lines, new power lines can get tricky, underlining power lines, building a new power plant. If any of that can go on your bill as a rider or a RAC, as a charge, that's basically your monthly payment to pay off whatever they're building plus interest. So that's why it's very important to have a strong state corporation commission, which we have not had in a long time. I think we're starting to get there, but this will allow us to actually push for equitable solutions, and then also like just make the decision on like, do we need that power plant, which at this point should be no every time as we're transitioning into a cleaner future, so that we're not ballooning our bills with extra charges through these rate adjustment clauses. So these are the three things that go into your bill. And again, if you have questions, I can also pause here just in case. But if not, if you have like deeper dives you want to do into this, I'm happy to talk about it a little bit more once I'm done with this presentation. So I'm going to keep it moving. So this gives you an idea of like how those things fit into your bill. So again, this is a typical Dominion bill using 1,000 kilowatts, which again, the typical bill is higher than the national average. So this is giving you an idea that we're already using too much energy. So in general, 60% of it is coming from your base rates. And remember, Dominion froze these and then passed a law to make sure that whenever the SEC can come in and decide that the amount that they're getting their base rates from, which is basically like everything they've built, everything that they need to pay for, some of those things may have gone offline. They may have been paid in full. They may have depreciated. Dominion has frozen the SEC's ability to look at that and decide if this should actually be dropped to maybe like 40%, because they actually don't need that much money to make their rate of return. So by doing that, they're inflating your bill. So, we're going to get into some solutions on how to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. But in general, their idea has been, we're going to keep this base rate up to just inflate the bills every month for projects that have gone offline or are not worth what people are paying for them. And then the fuel charges are the big thing that we can get rid of as we just expedite the transition to clean energy. So the more we go into clean energy, the more we take dirty coal plants, biofuel, burning trees, and natural gas offline, the more this is going to shrink as a share of our bill. And then the generation racks are 9%, but that's one that we'll have to make sure we're very careful in getting fairly priced wind and solar and batteries as we move into a clean energy future. Because as you can see right now, it's not a very high part of the bill, but if Dominion wants to keep making the amount of money they plan to make, they're going to need to build some really expensive things to move that up. So that's something that we have to look at. And then other can be anything from hurricane costs, they can throw that on your bill. If there's like a big storm and they have to go in and redo the infrastructure there. I think that the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative has a nonprofit, but a clause that allows them to recoup costs from that. Even like standby charges if you have solar. So those are other things that can kind of get thrown in there. And it's not a small portion of their bill, I mean, it's 14%. But some of those things are inevitable, and actually with climate change could get a little worse. There'll be more storms, and if a bunch of light poles go down, they go fix them, and as a regulated monopoly, they are able to recoup those costs. But that is an idea of like what could be going into some of these parts of your bill. So the fuel charges and the base rates are a great way to really bring down your costs through smart regulation. And then what we're going to get into next is about how energy efficiency can reduce not only some of these rates, but also can take 1,000 kilowatt typical bill and bring it down to 800 kilowatts. And that right there is going to save you more money than anything we can do. So you may not be able to see this, it's a lot on one screen. But if the main thing I want you to look at is Dominion is over here. There we go, use my mouse. So Dominion is over there, one sec, on the right by North Carolina and then us. We're showing this little tiny blue bar, which is the percentage of our bills that are energy efficiency savings. So nowhere near 1%. It's really low. And as you can see in Indiana, in Michigan, Arizona, even West Virginia, they are, almost 10 times where we are in energy efficiency savings. So you can see that Dominion is just not a utility who cares about saving money through energy efficiency. So their savings as a percentage of overall sales is 0.14%. So even if they match like the 50th percentile, they would be basically doubling that. And the 75th percentile is nearly tripling it. And they still be lagging way behind. So, nationwide growth and energy savings are happening all around the country, and Dominion has fought it tooth and nail. I spent way too many hours fighting them on the Virginia Clean Economy Act, where the one thing that they, had 50 lobbyists in the General Assembly telling everyone that they cannot do is to pass anything that's going to make them invest in energy efficiency. So this is the one thing where a not so sexy topic, no one really likes talking about energy efficiency, but as you can clearly see, the one thing that will really help people in, those kitchen table issues you always hear about, like their pocketbooks, is getting this monopoly to invest in weatherizing homes and replacing appliances and fixing windows and updating their infrastructure so that they are saving money for folks, and even changing the way that they actually charge you for power, so that if you power your home at night, you're spending less. If you power your home during a time when it's peak energy, then that might be where we're getting up to the regular base rates. But incentivizing folks to use energy in off-peak times can help us save a lot of money and save a lot of energy. So this is just giving you a bit of an idea of where Dominion stands in the country. So we're 6th to the bottom when it comes to the price of our energy bills, and then we're literally at the bottom, besides another Dominion in North Carolina, their side of the Dominion factor, who has 0% of their energy savings coming from energy efficiency. So we have a lot to work on, but the good news is there's really nowhere to go but up from here. And then they just kind of put this in perspective on what this means. You may have heard this term by now, but electricity burden, which is the percentage of your household income that's spent on electricity costs. As you can see, the red areas are people who are spending up to 6% of their income just on their electricity bill. And a lot of these places also have gas heat. So that's not even included in this. Technically, you should be spending 6% of your income or less on your entire energy bill. So if you have an all electric house, then this is still like at the highest point that is considered acceptable. But if you have a gas and electric house, this is absurd. And this map, which is also linked in here, these are all courtesy of the Virginia Poverty Law Center. I encourage you to go and look up their energy burden and the myth of Virginia's rate utopia study, where this is an interactive map where you can look at your own zip code. But it shows that, you know, in wealthier parts of the state, we're in the green areas. But if you dig into those, you'll start seeing red where the median income goes down. But everywhere where the median income is below 40,000, 30,000, they're in the red. And some of them are up near 10% of their income going towards their electricity bills. And, you know, in areas like Richmond and Southampton Roads, the #1 eviction capitals in America, you're seeing people spending 6 to 10% of their income just on their electricity bill to go along with rent that's 30, 40, 45% of their general income. So, and even in the Eastern Shore and in Southwest Virginia and South Side Virginia, really rural areas, you're seeing the same thing. So again, this is a compounding problem. It definitely fuels the eviction crisis and a lot of other issues where people are having to choose between putting food on their table or paying for medicine or paying their rent or paying their Dominion bill. And now it's been compounded even more by the fact that a lot of these folks don't have jobs right now, thanks to the pandemic. So we are in a tough spot, but again, we have nowhere to go but up. And I think the one thing to remember with the pandemic is that we're going to be in an opportunity where we can actually push our elected officials to do more on all of this because people are struggling and they want to see action. They want to see action. So hopefully at the federal level, we'll be able to see an influx of funds. And I think a lot of those funds are going to be coming directly to states for them to figure out. So our legislature could be coming back in January with a lot of money they need to dole out. And we need to make sure that especially when it comes to energy, is going to alleviate this electricity burden by investing in energy efficiency and holding Dominion accountable through our regulators. So I wanted to wrap this and then make sure I leave time for your questions by just talking about a few things you can do to help make this happen. One is we need to push our legislators to stop taking monopoly money. And we've been doing a very good job of it recently. But basically, right now we had about almost 60 candidates pledge not to take Dominion's money in the legislature. And about 30 of them in the House got elected. Like about a third of the 100 delegates in our state House got elected doing that. And a few senators, I can't remember the exact number there. So we're getting close to possibly, you know, at least having a majority of the Democratic delegation, but close to a majority of an entire House of our General Assembly who's not taking monopoly money, which is great. It's a great pledge, but the next step should be that they should just ban monopolies from giving people money. I mean, they are regulating them. There's really no reason for them to be paying for their campaigns. So I think that is a next step that can happen from a lot of the momentum that we've built as we head into 2021, when we're going to have new elections for our entire state House and new maps. So probably new elections for our state Senate. So I encourage you to reach out to your legislator and make sure that they are not taking Dominion's money and that they support banning not just Dominion, but all monopolies from giving to the folks who are sent to Richmond to regulate them. And if they're not, then I encourage you to run against them or find someone who does and start making sure that these are tough decisions for them. And then the other thing is just try to get involved with the regulatory conversation. Ask your legislator about the SEC. check the State Corporation Commission's website, as they're going to be having hearings on everything from a price on carbon and like what the actual health cost of carbon should be. And this is not a price for you. This is just that when Dominion or any other utility comes up and says, I want to build a new natural gas plant, instead of just looking at the fuel cost, they will provide a dollar impact on the health costs of it. So this is, you know, exactly what does this mean in terms of asthma attacks, lost days at work, any sort of other co-pollutants that come from it. All that can come from the SEC. And also, because of the Clean Economy Act, the SEC is going to be throwing out RFPs or requests for proposals on new solar, wind projects, and they need to keep those costs contained. And any energy efficiency projects have to be approved by them. So them knowing that people are watching them, I think will go a long way. But the legislators create the rules that they play by. So they really care who's watching them. So I just encourage you to start looking into that more. And then when you talk to your representative and your legislator, bring it up and see what they say about the SEC. And then lastly, you know, with all these crises that are happening right now, I talked a bit about what's going to happen at the federal level, maybe. And then also at the state level, Dominion is up for a rate review. So they're going to look over like what their electricity rates are, the SEC, and decide if they're too high. And right now the SEC is pretty handcuffed on what they can actually say. But legislators have an opportunity to take those handcuffs off and ask them to actually look at everything that Dominion has been charging us for the last 5 years and see if they overcharged us. And heads up, they have overcharged us about $500 million. So all that money could either come back as a refund, or I think a lot of it could go to making sure that the vulnerable people who are really struggling with their electric bills right now can get some relief. Because as of now, Dominion is planning to give them relief and then charge you for the relief, which I don't think makes any sense when they've already, you know, charged us nearly $1 billion in overcharges. They should have some money left over in their piggy bank to help out those folks. So that is a possibility. It was a governor's priority in the special session. I think it can be brought up again. And then, you know, there's a bill called the Fair Energy Bills Act that could also open up that opportunity. So a lot of great opportunities to get involved. The main thing you can do is just ask your legislator about these things. And if they've never heard of it, ask them why, and then start bothering them until they give you an answer. Or, you know, you can take it from April's playbook and run against them. But let's make sure that we're putting some pressure on them. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I was hoping to make this a conversation, but I went on a little longer than I thought I would, but happy to answer any questions. I think I saw one in the chat. Oh, the Arcadia thing. Since we switched to Arcadia, which says it's buying 100% wind, but the lines are provided by Dominion, and the result is that we pay a relatively small surcharge. Arcadia is playing as fair as they can. There are a lot of rules around making third parties extremely hard to come into Virginia. So again, because Dominion is vertically integrated, they own the poles. So they have to pay them a surcharge. So again, that's something the SEC could get into and take away that surcharge. Your legislators have decided that it's fair for them to have to charge you that extra fee. So that's something I think you can bring in as an energy competition thing and say, you know, we want to have a fair opportunity to look around elsewhere for our energy if other people are going to give it to us. And then on why Dominion should be responsible for making our homes more energy efficient. I mean, I guess the main reason is, you know, because they are providing our energy and they are given the opportunity to have us pay for it without any competition. So that's supposed to be a fair price. So Dominion should be working to make sure that we are getting energy at a relatively fair price that also is like working in the interest of their customers. So if they're only working to jack up prices, then they're not working in the interest of their customers and kind of failing as a monopoly. So that's one thing. And then also energy efficiency retrofits are really expensive. So I think for some folks, they may be able to do it. But the idea of investing thousands of dollars for a return that could take 10 years, when Dominion can do it and still recoup, some of their money because they're a monopoly, it just seems like it's better in their interest to do it, get most of their money back. They may not get a profit on it, and help out the folks who are bound to be getting their energy. And Natalie, what can be done about Dominion being vertically integrated? We could deregulate our market, force them to sell off parts of their vertically integrated monopoly so that they could only own generation, but they have to sell off the transmission, or vice versa. I know there are some groups working on that. Clean Virginia has done a lot of work on trying to split this up and bring some competition into the market. So that is definitely a way we can go. And I think you'll be hearing a lot more about that in the years to come. And you can look at places like Texas who have done a pretty good job of like creating a market that is not vertically integrated, but still reliable and relatively clean. Unfortunately, they haven't worked on solar like they have wind, but at least they're providing some competition. And April, y'all have really good questions. April asked, can you talk a bit about the cozy relationship between the SEC and the General Assembly? Doesn't the GA appoint SEC members? So yes, the GA does. The GA approves SEC members. The governor appoints them. So it's similar to like a Supreme Court thing, but it's both houses that approves it. I don't know if they're that cozy. The SEC typically comes into the General Assembly and tells them that they don't like their bills, or they think that they cost too much. So there's a bit of an antagonistic relationship between the two. But I think the main thing is that not only does the GA approve the SEC members, they write the laws that govern how the SEC regulates. So for years, Dominion has handed over bills to legislators that take away all the SEC's power to regulate them. And then the SEC comes in, says this will take away our power, your bills will go up. Dominion says, no, it won't. And then the legislature passes the bill. So if anything, it's a cozy relationship between the General Assembly and the people the SEC are supposed to be regulating. And then the SEC is left somewhat hamstrung. And then the other issue is that we've unfortunately had a lot of SEC commissioners who were appointed by folks who are very cozy with the folks that they're regulating. So that's leading to people who are pretty cozy with Dominion being on that board. So I think we have one pretty good appointment recently. There could be a new opening coming soon, and that would be an opportunity for the governor to appoint someone good and for the General Assembly to make sure that that's someone good. And thanks, Mike. I don't know if he left, but appreciate that.
Harrison, how long do those appointments in the SEC last for? Do you know offhand?
I believe 6 years. Try to make sure that a governor's appointment lasts past his administration.
Harrison, could you talk a little bit about what's happening with RGGI? I gather there's some big corporations suing to slow down.
You froze on me, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. So basically, we had a feeling this would happen. We passed a bill to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and put a price on carbon in Virginia. And reinvest that money, a lot of it in low income energy efficiency, and then another chunk of it in sea level rise mitigation. And now Virginia manufacturers are trying to block Virginia from joining RGGI. basically saying that the rule was unlawful because there was a very long process through regulatory agencies with thousands of public comments to create the rule that RGGI is now abiding by, which many of you may have put comments into. And then when we passed the bill, we just had the bill conform to that rule so that we didn't have to go through another year of rulemaking. And the Manufacturers Association is saying that because we didn't go through another year of rulemaking, they're put at a disadvantage and didn't get their chance to have their say, even though they had over a year and a half to say a lot, and they said plenty about how much they didn't like this. So I don't think the lawsuit's going to go anywhere, but it does slow down this long, drawn-out process of trying to join RGGI. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with it, but it's kind of the age we're in now. Anything good or bad you do will get held up in court for a bit before it becomes a thing. You all know your stuff. These were great questions.
We still have a good 13 minutes left in our time this evening. So yeah, if you have anything else, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat, and you should be able to go ahead and click and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question directly.
Well, if nobody minds, I have a question on another subject. Harrison, I was wondering if you would tell us about the organization that you now work for. I know very little about it and would like to know more. I gather it's a national organization.
Pretty much. We're not in every state, but I think we're from like the Mountain West over to a lot of the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic. And the Equity Fund it's a foundation. So, our goal is to raise money and give money to organizations who we believe are fighting for, a powerful movement to stop climate change and create an equitable, clean energy future. So we do that through giving. We also have a policy accelerator that kind of provides some policy expertise for organizations who are newer. Our main goal is to actually push for groups who don't necessarily work in climate change to start doing the work. So Black and Indigenous-led groups who are doing a lot of civic engagement, we're trying to push them into the climate movement to start bringing a different perspective. And then the goal is that as we start seeing more and more climate bills show up at the state level, there's a conversation about energy justice, energy democratization, which is kind of what Natalie was getting at in her question. And the idea that a new clean energy future doesn't have to look like the old extractive future. And a lot of times, in the cases of the groups who are in the legislature doing the lobbying, they are representing folks who are perfectly comfortable as things were, and the goal is just to get off of fossil fuels. And we're trying to bring people into the conversation who are being hurt badly right now and do not want to go through the same thing with just windmills and solar panels all over the place. So that's the mission. We're in Florida, Georgia, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And hopefully we'll be adding more states in the future.
How many people work for that?
I think 10 people, pretty small.
And you yourself, are you working solely in Virginia or Virginia plus other states?
So I am not doing grants in Virginia right now. I may in the future. I am in North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, and I definitely like talk to our folks who were in Virginia. But they want to give me a bit of a break before all my friends start asking me for money as I work for a foundation. So I work in some other states.
I see.
Harrison, this is Kathy, and first I want to thank you so much, and I've enjoyed this so much, and also appreciate your willingness to have it recorded so we can share it with other groups and people. And even though you are not working with grants in Virginia, are you aware and can you share with us what activity your organization is doing in Virginia?
I don't know how much I can share about our grant making. I mean, we work with groups like CCAN, New Virginia Majority, and folks like that. But our main goal is basically to find grantees and allow them to do the work, and we just make sure that we're giving them what they need to make it happen. So I don't think I can get into our whole portfolio here, but generally our goal is to make sure that we're kind of pushing the conversation a little bit more towards equity, but through our grantees. Like, you're probably never going to see the Equity Fund's name on something in Virginia. We're just trying to make sure that the folks who are doing the work have the resources to make it happen.
And are you working with statewide organizations, or are there smaller organizations that you're working with?
Mostly statewide.
Statewide.
Some are smaller, but yeah, I think we want to pass policy. So it's usually folks
Right.
who in some way are going to be going to the state capitol.
Right. Great. It's fantastic, and it gives me hope.
Yes, we got to have hope. I think we're moving in the right direction, slower than we need to.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I saw Natalie's question. Yeah, that was an eye-opening article. I mean, I was, I talked to Patrick a lot about that article. I was quoted in a few times. I think there are two things that we learned. There are a bunch of things we learned, but two things I think that rose to the top. One is that we are now in a position where we don't need to negotiate with Dominion all the time. I think that is status quo in Virginia. If you have a bill, well, it used to be if you have a bill, your bill dies, and then you try to get whatever you can out of the Dominion bill. And now it was, we had a bill and we need to protect it by negotiating with Dominion because that's what the old guard is telling us to do. And I don't think we have to do that anymore. And I think the VCEA was a good example of like how far we've come, and then also realizing that we're in a whole new world now. And it's going to be scary to do things like that and go against the big dog who clearly still has a lot of power in that building. But we're past that now. And then the other thing is just that we got to bring in more folks who understand what working people are going through, what the grassroots are thinking about, and continue to build a bigger movement when we're working on policy. With folks who are, going to have to realize that when you get in the legislature, you're definitely not going to get the bill that you wrote. That's just not how it works. Things change in there. There are a lot of stakeholders, but the more people we have coming together, the more people we have to protect what we know is right. So I'm hoping that, that's what I learned from being in there and having to, go through those very long days fighting with Dominion. And I hope that, a lot of my colleagues learned it as they, get ready for the next big fight in the years to come. And I think, yes, that's the article that Natalie was talking about. Sorry, Susie wrote a long question that I'm trying to read. I don't know any exciting organizing stuff happening on municipal utilities. I've seen some on co-ops. Of course, you know, it's kind of the same deal as with the SEC. Like your local electeds still have some control over what's happening. Like they have a self-appointing board. So I don't know if that means that they are appointed by the city council or within the organization. But, you know, I mean, you have folks who are running your city who can change how they're getting their energy from Dominion, depending on how binding that contract is, renegotiate it. And then as we pass more bills that allow cities to procure their own clean energy, I think this will be a great opportunity for these munis to come in and say, we want to get our own clean energy. We want to build a solar array in our city, and we don't need to get all this energy from Dominion. And the only way to do that is to get the legislature to open up that opportunity. Where Dillon Rule states, so basically whatever you want to do at the city level, the legislature has to approve it. So it still kind of all goes back to the General Assembly in a lot of cases with this state. See you, Natalie.
Kirsten, there is another question further up in the chat that asked if you could give any examples of utility companies that have robust weatherization programs in place and how they execute that work.
I'm trying to think. I know there are some, like Colorado, I forgot the name of their utility. They've done some pretty good work on moving towards more energy efficiency. Arkansas has a really good energy efficiency resource standard, which is what we passed in Virginia, but we need to strengthen it, which is basically just that like a utility has to save a certain amount of money through energy efficiency resources each year. And that number goes up, that percentage goes up each year. So they would just give projects to the SEC. The SEC would decide if those projects are affordable, and then they can do that, and it will lead to saving money across the board. So, and I believe Arkansas has a really good one that is actually, you know, in line with like what's possible in a southern state. So I would look at them, and it's not really a utility. It's just like the General Assembly coming together and making that happen, which will work better for us anyway, because then you can bring in APCO, you can bring in the co-ops, and possibly even the municipals to also invest in energy efficiency. And their goal is they're going to hit a 10% reduction in demand, I believe, over the next 5 years. Next 10 years.
Probably have time for about one more question if folks have anything else. And if not, we can go ahead and wrap it up. But Harrison, thank you so much for joining us. This was a really wonderful discussion and talk. Thank you, everyone who joined the call this evening and for your questions. Again, keep a lookout for other events like this coming from the Climate Action Alliance of the Valley, Shenandoah Group of the Sierra Club, and the Harrisonburg 50 by 25 campaign. Thanks, everyone, so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.